The time has finally come. We are going over my top 10 favorite films of 2019. This has been a really hard year. This list has shifted back and forth, and I cannot wait to hear what your guys' thoughts are. What are some of your favorite films of this year? Make sure to leave a comment down below, and if you guys are new here, make sure again to hit that like and subscribe button so you guys never miss out on content like this. Early movie reviews next year in 2020. Tons of big content coming out, and look forward to in the first week of January. I will be giving out a couple special videos that are going to be starting and really formulating for what 2020 is going to be all about. So if you guys want to be a part of that, you guys want to be a part of this channel, make sure again to hit that like and subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on any sort of that content. Again, I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on what your favorite films of this year were, but without further ado, let's get started. Let's get into my top 10 favorite films from 2019. Coming down to my number 10. Now, before I really start this list, understand this. I had to have seen at least these films twice. That's kind of the preface that I made for this. If I went and saw this film twice, I felt like it deserved to be on this list. And coming at my number 10 is going to be Jojo Rabbit. This is a movie that I shifted back and forth for quite a bit until I finally got to see it for a second time. And my God, Taika Waititi, I really think this film should be a frontrunner for Best Picture, if anything. I think Taika Waititi's direction is perfection in here. I think his script is fantastic, but the direction in here is what kept me so strong with this. It's a hate satire taking place in World War II about a young 12-year-old, 10-year-old boy or whatever who wants to join the Nazi army, but his imaginary friend Adolf Hitler doesn't like that his mother is keeping a Jewish woman in their attic. Fascinating. And it could have gone in the totally wrong ways, but it didn't. It went in all the best and great ways possible, and it works in all those manners because of Taika Waititi's direction, and again, because it even weaves into the performances. Taika as Hitler is funny. It's hilarious as hell. Roman Griffin Davis is one of the most genuine performances I've seen all year. Thomasin McKenzie is great, but it's Scarlett Johansson that I felt like really stole the show in this movie. And I truly feel like if it wasn't for Marriage Story, she'd be getting a lot more buzz for this film as well as Best Supporting Actress. There's a couple little things that Taika does that fit throughout the movie, and when it builds up to why he's been doing it throughout it sinks your heart. Because you might laugh here and there, but by that moment, you get emotionally enwrapped into this film and see what it is all about. It's a tough film to watch. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. I absolutely love Jojo Rabbit, and it becomes my number 10. And coming on my number 9 is probably going to be on no one else's list, but it's on my list, and that is Longshot. Now, I love putting at least one comedy in my top 10 list every single year, and Longshot made me laugh the hardest, made me die laughing the hardest, but also made me emotionally enwrapped into this story. I'm a major fan when it comes to rom-coms. Well, I wouldn't say a major fan. I can be picky with them, but when they're done right, they are done right. And I felt Longshot did it all in the right ways. And yeah, the coolest thing about this is I got to go to South by Southwest to get there, to be at the premiere, see Seth Rogen, see Charlize Theron in real life. But it wasn't that. I went back and saw this film at least twice more in theaters once it finally came out, and I've had it on Blu-ray and have been watching it endlessly. This is one of my most favorite films of the year because I didn't expect it to be. I kept laughing, I kept recommending it to people, and I thought one of the best things about it is the fact that it builds up Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron to become a couple in here. Two unlikely matches, because they are a long shot for each other. But the way they build it up in this movie, the way that Jonathan Levine is able to structure it within his directing is some of the strongest relationship things that I've ever been able to see in a rom-com, and it truly made me believe that they did fall in love. And while, yes, it falls into some of the things of, yeah, they might break up. Yes, this might happen. This might be a fight between them. It works for the story and it feels real. And I just really like that. And plus, did I already mention that it made me laugh my ass off? There's two lines in particular that I've been repeating all throughout the year. And coming on my number 8 is, when Martin Scorsese makes a new movie, it's most likely going to make my top 10, and that is The Irishman. I love The Irishman. It's a movie that the more and more I think about, the more I start to fall in love with. And I love that Scorsese got to make this 3.5-hour gangster epic, something I never thought we'd be able to get, but we got now. And what I always equate it to is when we go back and watch his film Silence, I love that movie besides the third act. I felt like it was very rushed and montaged through. And I felt like if The Irishman was made by a different studio, that same exact format would have happened in here and we would have montaged through the third act. And while yes, the film does feel long and you feel it by the end, I think Scorsese wanted you to feel that epic journey. Because as you're going through Frank's life and spanning many decades, You feel all the regret, the pain, the guilt that is behind him and that Robert De Niro is giving inside this performance. By the end, you are feeling all that weighted down on you as well. And I think it makes for a very wise Scorsese, and which shows how far he has come when it comes as a director. Whether we go back and look at Goodfellas and Casino to now The Irishman, we see how long he has come by. And of course, Pacino and Pesci are perfection in here. And I'll even add in, I think that if you're complaining about the runtime, whenever else are you going to get these three guys directed by Scorsese in a 3.5-hour gangster epic? Probably never. This is the Avengers of gangster films. Coming up, my number 7 is going to be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm a major fan of Tarantino as well, and when he's coming out with a new film, it's going to be one of my most anticipated films of the year, and Tarantino did not disappoint me at all when it comes to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a movie that the more and more I watch, the more I appreciate. I love just hanging out with DiCaprio, Rick Dalton, and of course Brad Pitt as his best friend, and one of the best scenes of this year is when they're just sitting on the couch watching TV and commentating. It's elements like that that make so inside baseball that makes me just fall in love with this movie and make me feel like I'm not alone, because I love movies. I love old-fashioned Hollywood, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood dives into all that. And some people had many issues with Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. I personally didn't. I like what she did and the essence and the soul that they brought to her inside this movie, and the way that they kind of brought the charm throughout this whole entire movie with her character is one of the strongest things that I think Tarantino did in this movie. Would I have liked for her to have had a stronger part? Absolutely. But I thought what they did with her as this kind of MacGuffin in a sense was quite unique. And I just really appreciate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's one of the most entertaining films of this year. And some people hate the third act. I love the third act. Coming up, my number 6 is, a movie that I can't get out of my mind. That is Uncut Gems. Adam Sandler should be nominated for an Oscar. If not, should be one of the main frontrunners this year for the Oscars because of this movie. This is not for everyone, though. And some of the films on my list aren't going to be for everyone, especially when it comes to an A24 movie. Sometimes they make movies that just aren't for everyone. But Uncut Gems did something that, besides the last 3 minutes, literally, I have one issue with the movie, and that is the last 3 minutes, or else this film probably would have even been higher on my list. I thought the direction here was great, and it feels so improv. It feels so real. It really feels like you were in this New York City jeweler's shoes, going about in his life as he's just trying to make the most money possible, being ran off by loan sharks and many other people he owes money. And it just works because, again, I've mentioned in my review, this is one of the most frustrating characters in, cinema history, but it's Adam Sandler playing him. And he does it in such a charming way that it's hard not to root for him, even though he is a complete asshole, and he's also very frustrating, and he stresses you the hell out. There are multiple parts in this movie where you're just going, God, dude, hurry the fuck up! What are you doing? And there's other moments where you're like, oh, okay, I get what he's going with. But you still are kind of a dick and an idiot. But I get what you're doing, man. I just love this about it, and the way that Adam Sandler is able to portray him as this character is absolutely one of my favorite things of 2019. And really, this film should be for all the Oscars, and I really hope it starts getting into those nominations. And coming on my number 5 is going to be Midsommar, the director's cut. I want to preface this because I don't think if it was for the director's cut, this would not have made my top 10. Because while I really appreciated Midsommar, and I absolutely was fascinated by it because of this psychological folktale that Ari Aster decided to tell, it's the third act and some of the choices that the characters make in the original cut that I didn't fully believe and get locked into. The director's cut adds around 20 to 30 minutes into this film that actually added more to the movie than I ever expected it to add. And it was quite unique in that fact because I didn't expect it to actually add and change my thoughts on certain character developments and where those might go. Besides that, it's what Ari Aster has to say about relationships in here. I can very much see what is going on here. And being in a toxic relationship, I think many of us have been before. I think what Midsommar has to say about it is quite one of the most unique ways of talking about it. Yes, is it pretty much a remake of The Wicker Man? Sure. But I think Ari Aster made it his own within his direction and within the mythology building inside this cult-like area. The cinematography is great, and I already mentioned Florence Pugh in one of my other lists. She is jaw-dropping awesome in this movie, and I thought she was fantastic, and really all the performances are great in here. It has a weird, wicked humor to it, a weird horror tone to it, but I just couldn't take my eyes off the screen, and it felt like I was watching a canvas being painted right in front of me. It's like if you take acid, which I've never done, but if you took acid and just sat there watching someone paint something. It's like Midsommar is doing that to you. Before I get to the rest of my list, guys, make sure again to hit that like and subscribe button and comment down below. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this list. Do you guys agree with me? Do you not? Let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below and what your guys' list would be, because that's the best thing about film. It's subjective. You might disagree with my list, and I might disagree with yours, but I love seeing everyone else's list and having a great discussion down below in the comments, guys. So make sure again to hit that like and subscribe button. Comment down below, and if you guys want to check out films early in 2020, make sure to head over to Sandwich on Films on how to see films early. And of course, a big thank you to you and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. Of course, I always do have honorable mentions in here, and I want to mention some of those. So, of course, some of my honorable mentions, which some of you guys might kill me, is Knives Out, 1917, which is a brilliant war film, one of the best of this decade as well. Us, I just love Us. I appreciate it more and more that I watch it. Booksmart, Shazam, Far From Home, Endgame, Joker, Ad Astra, Marriage Story, Yes God Yes. I think of Yes God, if I would have been able to see it one more time, the film's not technically out in 2018. I saw it at South by Southwest at its premiere. Fantastic movie. And of course, one that I wanted to mention in here is Serenity. If you didn't get to see my review of that, if you have not seen Serenity 2019, it might not be a great film, but it's one you gotta see. I mean, my number 4 is gonna be Parasite, one of the best movies made of this decade. I love Joon-ho so much. Snowpiercer is one of my favorite films as well of the decade too. There's something about Joon-ho's and his direction that he's able to do inside these movies, and Parasite, just when you look at every element of this movie, whether it's the cinematography, the writing, the script, the tonal shifts that switch back and forth, because this has elements of a comedy to a thriller to horror and even dramatic. It shifts back and forth so many times, but it is one of the most wickedly entertaining movies that I have seen in this decade, and one of the ones that truly captured me. And when you hear many hype going over many months about a movie called Parasite, I didn't see a trailer, I didn't know anything about it. I just saw the poster and I said, what is this movie about? You see the movie, it clicks what it's about right in the first 30 minutes, and you're like, I'm all in. Some people might have issues with the third act and what it has to say, and maybe it gets a little bit too symbolic. I didn't. I was locked in, and I just couldn't stop watching this movie the whole entire time. It's one of the movies that I definitely love going back and rewatching, and I can't wait till it comes out on Blu-ray so I can buy that thing. Coming in at my number 3 is truly one of the most heart-wrenching, most hilarious, but at the same time one of the most touching films of the year, and that is The Farewell. I laughed quite a bit in this movie, but I also cried quite a bit as well. Awkwafina deserves an Oscar nomination hands down for this movie, and it's a movie about this Chinese American who goes back after she finds out that her grandmother is dying. But the thing in this Chinese culture, they don't tell their loved ones that they're dying until they're right there, and it's this whole way of being sucked into this culture that you're not familiar with, and being able to feel like you were there with them and understanding every single element with it. And actually the family aspect of this movie is so strong that you truly feel like you are a part of this family. Lulu's direction in here is absolutely stunning. I really can't believe how great The Farewell is. It's one of my most rewatched films of the year, and I really can't emphasize enough that you guys need to check it out if you didn't get to. And coming to my number 2, I could have easily put this in my most underrated list, but I wanted to save it for my best list, and that is Waves. I loved Waves, and I've gone back and forth with this being my number 1. I think technically this is one of the best made films of the year. From a cinematography, from an editing level, from even the score, it all comes about to make one of the most wildly vibrant films that I've seen this decade, and I think Edward Schultz's direction here helps for that. This is truly like just something different. And the way that the story is told, it's a 2-hour film, but the first half of the story is completely different than the second act. And usually how films like this nature would go is it builds up and then shows one part of the story, but this one decides to show 2 parts. A big event happens by the middle of this film, and it vastly changes what the second half is about and shows the aftermath of it. And I feel like many films like this don't dive into that at all. Plus, Calvin Harrison Jr. is absolutely perfection here. Taylor Russell is fantastic in here as well, and Sterling K. Brown is awesome. I mean, all 3 of these should be nominated across the board. The fact that Waves isn't even being talked about this year at all for any of these is blasphemy, and I think many people aren't even checking it out. Again, the cinematography is great, and there's something that they do with the aspect ratios that the way that it could be distracting for many other films, whether you talk about Transformers The Last Night with Michael Bay, the way that he changed the aspect ratios, he does this for a purpose in the story in Waves, and it's one that keeps you interlocked while also being sucked into this world. Coming on my number 1, I might get crap for this, but I don't care. My number one's Toy Story 4. It's my most rewatched movie of the year, and I've gone back and forth with putting it at my number one. But a big part of that is that I am a giant Toy Story fan. Like, Toy Story is my favorite franchise of all time. And when they announced this movie, I really wasn't looking forward to it. I was excited to get more adventures with Buzz and Woody, but I was also like, Toy Story 3 ended so perfectly. And I think that's how many of us felt. But what I got out of Toy Story 4, and also not really being impressed with the trailers at all, I thought they were cute, but I wasn't locked in yet. I was going into this film very worried, wanting to love it, and I walked out loving it. And every time I watched it afterwards, I loved it more and more. I love what this film has to say about rediscovery in life. And I think for people who aren't getting those purpose, I don't think they've gone through that in their life yet. When I was back in high school, I believed that my purpose would be a track runner, and I loved running track. And then I graduated, and, that kind of faded. And you want to find your purpose in life. And I think in life, a lot of us change what our purpose is in the way that we rediscover it. And I think Toy Story 4 showed that in the way of Woody. What happens when you feel like your main purpose is done? You have to move forward. You have to move on to become happy. And I think that's what this film does. And it really resembled my choice of kind of changing and saying, I'm going to pursue this film stuff. I'm going to pursue talking about movies. And without that, I wouldn't be here. And I feel for Woody, I feel for Forky, I feel for Buzz Lightyear. I feel like you get all this stuff, and people say Buzz is an idiot in here. I don't think that. I feel like there's a discovery in there as well for him becoming this leader of the group. Same with Jesse. Would I've liked to see a little bit more of the older characters? Absolutely. But the new characters also added a lot of these elements. Ducky and Bunny have this. Duke Kaboom especially has it. And especially even Bo Peep. There's a sense of discovery in here, and Josh Cooley makes one of the best films of this year, and personally, my personal favorite of the year. I laughed, I cried, and I absolutely was blown away by this movie. I could easily say it's a predictable movie, but I think that's because I saw the trailers, and I wish I never did, because I think without that, I wouldn't have been surprised by this movie. I think Pixar takes risks, they knew what they were doing, and they didn't do this for a cash grab, and I 100% believe that because there is so much heart and passion put into Toy Story 4. And you know what? You might disagree with me. I understand that, but this is a movie that truly took my heart away, and I absolutely loved Toy Story 4. Guys, that's going to be my top 10 list of the year. There are a couple other films that I could have easily slid into here. The Lighthouse is one that I definitely wanted to check out again. Honey Boy, Little Women. There's so many different great films from this year, but this was a great list to talk about, guys. Thank you guys again so much for clicking on this, and of course, guys, make sure to look out for my top 25 films of the decade. That list should be coming out very soon. Got a couple live streams going out in the next couple of days, but of course, guys, make sure to comment down below. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Do you guys agree with my list? Do you not? Let's discuss it, guys. But of course, until next time, stay classy.